What's up, fam? I'm back in the M. I don't really have much of a plan for this video, but I'm just gonna spit. Might be all over the place, take what resonates and just ignore what doesn't. As you can see, I'm back to my normal self. I don't look like Moses anymore. Haircut and shave and all that, we're all good. So, I think today I want to start with the idea. A couple days ago was the Jewish holiday, not necessarily holiday, maybe it's more of like a day of remembrance. It's called Tisha B'Av. And Tisha B'Av, I believe it's the ninth of Av uh, in Hebrew. And the reason it's so important is because it is a very heavy day spiritually, religiously, and in all forms essentially. This is the anniversary of when both of the temples were destroyed. The uh, first and second temple were destroyed on this day. A whole bunch of other stuff has happened on this day. It's just been a very like historically bad day. Yeah, it's been a pretty terrible bad day, um, all over the board for myself as well. A couple years ago, don't want to go into specifics of why it is not very good for myself personally, but it's one of those days that you should just not do anything and you should just reflect and mourn and do a whole bunch of stuff like that. So from the ninth of Av, that was last week. Um, we also have, of course, all this retrograde mumbo jumbo going on with Mercury or whatever the hell stuff is going on with the moon and planets and stuff. Um, so not only is there that, this time falls within all that energetic mumbo jumbo. And I already like made a bunch of videos about that before. So I'm not going to talk too much about it. But from then on, that's like the heaviest and worst day of the year. From then on, it's pretty uphill. Um, for example, I think it's this Friday or Saturday or something is Tu B'Av, which is like the Jewish Valentine's Day. And it's either people like to either celebrate it as like Jewish Valentine's Day or as like a just day of joy and day of happiness and celebration and things like that. So that is a pretty spiritually positive time. And so I don't know why I brought that up, but to connect all these ideas, um, I know a lot of people are going through very difficult times, whether it's a breakup, or losing a loved one. It's a pretty tough time for a lot of people, um, and so the reason I bring this up is because a lot of the time when people are going through such difficult times, whether it's a breakup or the passing of a loved one or things of this nature, our first instinct a lot of the time is to run away from the pain, do whatever we can to get rid of it and to numb it and things like that. Um, people have Sometimes people have better coping mechanisms than others, whether it's drugs, things like this. Um, and so once again, the reason I say this is because our first inclination a lot of time is to run away from it, but what I would suggest to you is to, when you get an opportunity, and I'm going to say it's an opportunity, when horrific things happen in someone's life, instead of running away from it, I think it's very valuable to lean into the pain, lean into the hurt, lean into the heartbreak, because as we know, hopefully things shouldn't always be terrible, okay? Just like good times aren't always permanent, bad times shouldn't always be permanent either, right? And so with the times that we have bad times, just like you would make the best of a good time, I think it's very valuable to make the best of a worse time. And so a lot of times if people have bad habits, for example, like numbing the pain with drugs and alcohol and smoking and all that stuff, if you know that this is a time that's could be once in a lifetime horrific experience that you're dealing with, unfortunately, as much as it sucks and as much as your first inclination is to sort of numb the pain and avoid it and do whatever you can to not feel that pain, What I would suggest is to, instead of running away from it, for example, using drugs, using whatever substance people use to numb the pain, I would say use this as an opportunity to soak it all in. This is a time to lean into the pain by, number one, quitting drugs. Instead of numbing it, you can force yourself to be more upset. As much as cringy and whatever the hell it is, you can that you can lean into it and just feel and take in that sense of god awfulness, and use it as a power. I was watching a video, I think it was Leo Skeppy, and he said, um, through manifestation, not everything, like, it doesn't have to, you don't always have to be in a perfect good mindset to manifest and achieve certain things, right? And so a certain level of energy, whether you're on the spectrum, right? If it's all the way on this side, you're ecstatic, feeling amazing, and you're obviously going to be that. I think the highest form of energy is like gratitude or whatever. If you're on this side, that's fantastic, right? But not everyone can always just be on this side of the spectrum, right? So if you're on this side of the spectrum, you're feeling god awful, you quite literally want to jump off a cliff every single day. Like, unfortunately, people are like, things are not always amazing. Use that energy, use that pain. And I know people say this all the time, and like, just like work on yourself and things like that and love yourself. But this, a lot of the times people get confused with the idea that like transmuting that energy, that's brutal pain, it like should not ever be like mistaken with the idea that you're going to turn this energy into happiness. Not necessarily. You're not necessarily going to be super happy, right? And so you have to come to the conclusion that maybe your purpose, or maybe whatever the case may be, you're not necessarily meant to be super ecstatic and joyous and, all the time, right? You can transmute this energy once again and build something absolutely beautiful. And so, to segue, I know a lot of people talk about looks maxing and all these chronically online BS, um, but what I want to suggest is life maxing, everything maxing, right? Um, Someone said this before, and it resonated with me a lot. A lot of the times, people are completely addicted to video games, right? And people are just want to. There's characters in a video game, right? People want to max out this character and put in all this effort and time and energy into making their character in the video game absolutely perfect, right? I don't know if it's whatever character, if it's 2K, you want a 99 overall. I don't know. I don't really game as much anymore. Um, but what you can do is think of your life as a video game, right? On, at the end of the day, it pretty much is. We're living in a simulation, whatever. We can go down a whole other rabbit hole with that. Think of your life as a main character of a video game. Think of you as being the main character, right? And you have all these different uh, categories of things you can max out, right? Just like in, I don't know if it's 2K, you can max out a player's speed, agility, all these different things. In your life, there's many different categories of life. I think people say it's like the 5 Fs or whatever. I'm not going to use that. Um, but for example, when people say that, they're talking about finances, faith, your relationship with God, friendships and relationships, family. Um, so think of yourself as this video game, right? And this is not, let's say you're going through a breakup. Not everything is to, you know, improve yourself so much to the point that you make your ex whatever like jealous. Not everything is about making someone jealous and making them regret it. If that helps you, so be it. But I think the older you get, the more you realize it's not really about them. It's completely about you. Um, we have a very limited time on this earth. Some of you guys are luckier than others to have young parents or still have your grandparents or things of this nature, right? But even with them, our time is limited, right? Your mom, if you're lucky enough to still have your mom, I know many people that don't, unfortunately, and if they're watching this video, you know who you are. Please reach out to me. if you're lucky enough to still have your mom, unfortunately there's gonna come a day where there's gonna be the last time you ever see her, right? And so, turn the car on. A bad day is inevitable, okay? So you only have so much time to show your parents and build something for them, right? At the end of the day, our this is a big idea in Judaism, especially. Our parents brought us into this world to serve not only God but to serve them, right? And so you don't have, if you're a younger guy, time goes by like this, and you might think you have a lot of time. This is not the case. You really have a certain amount of time. I know a lot of times people want to buy their parents a car, buy their parents a house, pay off their debts, things like that. But the clock is ticking, right? So yes, we can be heartbroken, we can mourn, we can do all these things, we can not feel good about ourselves, whatever the case may be, in whatever sense of grief that we're dealing with, right? But at the end of the day, on big picture stuff, like our family's not going to be around forever. And this is assuming people live a healthy life and they, you know, grow old and there's no accidents that happen that take them away from this. So we also don't know if people are just gonna, never come home one day for whatever reason. Unfortunately, things like this happen. I hate to say it. Knock on wood 1,000 times. This doesn't happen to any of us and any of us watching. All we can do is pray, right? So transmuting all this energy of grief is a very, very heavy energy, right? Instead of running from it and instead of, I know it's uncomfortable. It's super uncomfortable. You want to sob all day. You don't even want to be on this planet. I get it. Trust me, I get it. But maybe this time of your life is meant to be a time of not happiness. Maybe it's supposed to be brutal, you know? And so you can't force yourself to be super happy and amazing and feel great in these situations because everything happens for a reason. Maybe you're put in a situation where you feel god awful and you're grieving, and this is for you to be able to transmute this energy, whether it's positive or negative, into building something beautiful. So when I mean max out your character in real life, this is obvious, get your money up type thing. Everyone knows you gotta get your money up, whatever the case may be. Um, you gotta do. There's main categories in life that are completely non-negotiable, right? There's faith. You have to strengthen your relationship with our Creator, right? Whether you're a religious person, whether you're born with religion, whether you weren't, right? If you were born with religion, you are blessed in the way that you have an outline and you have a dedicated path that you know to go forward and to grow with, right? If you're a Christian, if you're Jewish, if you're Muslim, if you follow Islam, whatever the case may be, these are all a blessing to have the guidance of. If you're not given that blessing of being like thrown into a religion directly off of birth, this is the time to max out your understanding of the universe, right? Like for example, the ex who passed away in 2018 would always say, study your laws of the universe. And so that is probably going to be my next video. We'll talk about that later. But learn about the universe, learn about the laws of the universe, get down to very, 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 very minute details. Everything is vibrations and frequencies. We've talked about this before. So this is the opportunity to learn all about that, right? If you're into fashion, this is the time to figure out your style, get new clothes, make yourself feel good in that way. I have always, like, I'm wearing a basic shirt right now, but whatever. I've always been into fashion. I've always loved it, right? So that's what personally makes me feel good. What makes me feel, you have to figure out what makes you feel good. Not everyone knows right off the bat, and that's totally okay. If you're someone that likes video games, sure, okay. Personally, what makes me feel good are cars, for example, my dream car, and fashion, clothes make me feel awesome. And Another thing is your physique, right? Your body. The only thing you have that you can really control is your body, right? And once again, we are spiritual beings in a physical world, right? So our body, our bodies are physical embodiments of our spirit. Okay, we can go however deep we want into this. But when people say your body is a temple, that's like very applicable. Your body is definitely a temple. And this is not to say, I'm not saying go get jacked, go get ripped and have a six pack and whatever, all this stuff so you can make your, ex whatever jealous. Half the time it's not going to matter about that, right? But it's a different type of feeling. Number one, when you look in the mirror and you enjoy what you like, there isn't just flabs, and if that's what you like, that's what you like, so be it. But if you have a certain physique in mind that you like, I'm not saying in a homo way, whatever, but there's some objectively nice physiques, right? If you have that in your head, this is the time to grow into that. This is the time to dial in every little detail. And so within all these categories are a million subcategories that you can go on endless tangents with, right? So when it comes to your physique, how do you need to eat properly in order to grow this physique? How do you need to train, right? When you're training in the gym, every single rep should matter. There should not be a single rep that you do that is like for whatever. You should almost, I would say not every set should go to failure, but your last two sets for a muscle group, it's a non-negotiable. Every single workout should end in failure to the point that you can physically, no matter how much exertion you put, your body will not move the weight, right? And so this is going to cause muscle damage. This is once again another video that we'll talk about. So how do you need to eat in order to achieve your goals? If you're someone that needs to gain weight, such as myself, I don't have much weight to lose, so my goal is to bulk. I know a lot of people are in a similar situation, and it's very hard to just shove your face with food, right? What you can do is protein shakes, right? Supplements, things like this. These are a cheat code, right? So there's all these little subcategories of things to go into to, you know, become your optimal self. I call it life maxing, right? Instead of looks maxing, you're life maxing. Sure, looks maxing has to do with, yeah, like getting your face together and your physique together and all this stuff. I honestly think if your goal is to attract people, it doesn't stop there, right? I also think that if that is your goal, if that's your motivation, so be it. But there's a certain point where if that's your motivation, you get diminishing returns, right? So you're not always, you can go down this path of getting validation from all these other people. Sure, if that's your thing, that's your thing. But if you don't know if that's your thing, and maybe out of lack, maybe you haven't experienced anything like that before, and you think that that is what you need in order to take it to the next level, I would urge you to internalize all this energy. And when I mean focus on yourself, this is what I mean. Accept the pain, embrace the pain. Say, like, my therapist said this the other day, and it really changed my life. You gotta reframe absolutely everything, right? So, yes, we could be heartbroken, right? Thank God we're heartbroken. Thank God for many reasons. Thank God we're heartbroken. Number one, because that means that we have the the capacity within our hearts to feel so deeply and to create so much love for someone, right? Not only that, thank God for to be able to grieve, because it pushes us on this spectrum so far that we can transmute all this energy into building something absolutely beautiful, right? So when it comes to finances, this doesn't just mean getting a job, and that was a really nice M3 that distracted me. Apologies. It doesn't mean getting a job and, if that's your way of growing your finances, so be it. But you need to take it to the next level. And the way to do this is number one, investing, and number two, business. You don't need a business. I know, contrary to what a lot of people say, my parents say this all the time as well, that you need a business degree to be able to do business and things like that. This is not the case. You should be, the point of business is so that you don't depend on someone else to put food on your plate, right? Because what happens one day, let's say people get like laid off from a job. This company is laying off a lot of people. Then what are you gonna do? You know? So not only that, but we saw this with the pandemic. Not only that, but when it's past your time, when your time on Earth is done, and it's time for you to provide for your family, right? How are you gonna do this? The only way is to build a business that will grow and to continue providing for your family through building something of value, right? Whether that's a store, whether that's I don't know what the case may be, an agency of some sort. This building something like this is gonna put food on your family's plates for generations, right? And that's the goal. Not all of us are blessed with generational wealth from the beginning. Not all of us have very rich parents or rich grandparents, whatever the case may be. If that's the case, you don't have a rich family, you really have no choice but to build something of value to create that generational wealth, right? So that's finance maxing, things of that nature. Find your fashion, find your style that you like. It's gonna make you feel good, and also it's fun, you know. Passion maxing, you know, if you're super into cars, you know, work to get your dream car. Use that as motivation. If you have your dream car, other passions in your life, you know, there's more to life than cars. If you like motorcycles, I really like motorcycles. I'm considering working on getting my license and getting a motorcycle and stuff like that as a passion, because that's my passion, right? I like to drive. Um, you know, fitness, I like to box. I have a lot of energy inside me. Today I went to a boxing class, you know. Um, Not only do you have to grow your faith with God, you have to grow your faith within your family, right? So if there's someone in your family that you may not get along with very well, or maybe friends, this is the opportunity to use this time to figure out where your differences are and set them aside. Because once again, our time here is extremely limited. It's not long enough to the point that we can hold grudges against each other and, you know, hurt each other and things like that. So, I've said this before, I'll say it again. If someone wants to walk out of your life, no problem. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. If that brings you pain, I know for some people, a lot of the time, you know, some people can get over things faster than others. You know, I'm not one of those people. I'm one of those people that if someone wants to leave my life, for the rest of my life, I'm like, how the hell is this even possible? But I take that as a blessing because I get so much energy and I get so much drive from someone walking out of my life, and I can use that to build, for example, these videos. This is my passion since I was a little kid. I was making videos on my grandma's computer when I was like 5, right? So figuring out your passions, figuring out what you like, and just going off of that, right? So not everything is about faith and money and fashion and, you know, things like that. You just got to max out. Think of every category that you can max out on your character's build, and you got to max out every single category, right? There should be, obviously, you're going to be stronger in some things than others, but try to max out every single category, right? And I'm not going to say this is for the next person that comes around or to make your ex jealous or whatever the heck. Once again, not everything is about other people. If other people are your motivation, awesome. But at some point, you got to figure out, when is it going to be about you, right? if you're going through a heartbreak and you are constantly building yourself, you're not going to be heartbroken forever, right? You're not going to be in this state forever. So you might as well take this as a building season and you build the living heck out of it, right? Um, and yeah, build your knowledge, build your everything, build your brain, feed yourself spiritually. And yeah. Okay, so I'm back in a park in Beverly Hills. Probably not make any difference to you, but had a couple new thoughts. One being is the reason I didn't really mention mental health and mental health maxing, as much as that's super important, mental health has its own purpose, right? So the context of this discussion that we're having is that if you're in a situation that you feel completely miserable and you're grieving, whatever the case may be, if you've gone through a breakup or you've lost someone, whatever the case is, it's like virtually that's something that's not in your control, right? It's virtually impossible to just wake up and the next day feel awesome, right? And all these extra things that we're talking about are not necessarily gonna make you feel better. I mean, they might make you feel better, but it's not gonna be a switch where you're like, okay, I'm good now. So this is why I say lean into the pain, because mental health and things like depression and sadness and anxiety and grief have a purpose, right? There's a functional purpose, there's an evolutionary purpose that we have for reasons to feel down, right? If if we just nonstop felt happy and that's the best way to evolve, then our ancestors and the generations before us would not know what to fix in order to survive, right? So the purpose of depression and things like that are to signal in your life that you need to make some changes. There needs to be something different, right? Whether that's the case of heartbreak, whether that's the case of grief, these all teach you things, right? So that's why I didn't really mention mental health maxing. Although if there is something, if there's like a certain situation, certain traumas or things that you have to work out, like then I 100% I'm of all people it's me to advocate for getting professional help for mental health, right? Get therapy, do what you got to do, But at the end of the day, like going to therapy and getting professional psychiatric help and things like that are not going to make you wake up one day and say, "Okay, yeah, I'm good." So, this is why I say lean into the pain, right? And another thing is think of your senses, right? We have sight, so that's physical looks maxing, whatever the case may be, whether that's your physique, whether that's your hair and your face and things like that, or your fashion, that's the physical aspect, right? There's also smell, right? Smell is very important. You can fall in love with colognes. I always see on Instagram, it's like kiss French, drive German, like Swiss watches or something like that. It's like, you know what I'm talking about. There's a level of prestige with every category that you can put yourself into. And if you're not one of those people that enjoys super materialistic expensive stuff, then it's totally fine. The outfit I'm wearing right now is no more than $12. This shirt was $7, my pants were $5, right? But you don't have to wear expensive stuff for them to look good, right? At the end of the day, like a lot of things like fashion, a lot of it is about fit. Maybe I'll drop a picture of my fit or something. Maybe I'll show you what I'm wearing right now, but this is one of my favorite outfits, right? So think of the five senses. Smell is one, sight is one, hearing is one, hearing is another one. Not only do you want to learn how to become a good listener, but you also want to learn how to articulate your thoughts and speak well, right? And that's two birds with one stone with what I'm doing here with YouTube. Not only is it my passion, but I'm practicing how to speak. So this also falls under the category of Riz or whatever the heck you want to call it when it comes to if your goal is women, right? Or if you want to attract a certain type of person, if you want to attract people into your life, right? So if you want to do, I'm not going to talk about rated R stuff, but you can rated R max, like I said. Um, you can improve literally every aspect of your life, and there's nothing you can lose from it, right? Especially when it comes to finances and it comes to looks and things like that. When you're improving your finances, for example, let's say you just got out of a relationship that was completely draining your wallet. The other person didn't care whatsoever about your personal finances at all and held a certain, you know, level of expectation that you felt like you could just never meet, right? Finances, if ignoring other people in the case, there's a sense of, in Judaism we call it parnasa, right? When you reach a level of finances that you can give back to the community and you can give back charity, that gives you a certain, I'm not gonna say luck, but it's a, you have good karma coming for you, right? So once again, understanding the laws of the universe that I mentioned before, whatever you put in, you'll get back, right? If you are constantly putting in like negativity, then you're gonna get negativity back, right? And I hate to use all these brain rot terms like aura and stuff like that, and aura maxing, whatever the heck. But aura is another thing, right? Like, specifically, there's some people, for example, let's say you know someone in your life that every time you're around them, you feel down, right? That's someone with a bad aura. But there's also people like, for example, there's a really cool waiter or a cashier at a store. When you walk in, and you sometimes you automatically get that, like, that's him, that person is the guy. You can be that person, right? When you go to a store, when you're interacting with other people, you can do your best to make the other person smile, and you don't have to be like a super funny, charismatic person. Just by putting a smile on your face and having positive energy, you can radiate positive energy to other people, and that positive energy is going to return at some point or another, right? And again, this is not for getting things in return, right? At the end of the day, you want to constantly put out, you want to constantly give without expecting anything in return, right? So, this is just to let you know, you guys there's infinite things you can work on when it comes to your life. There's infinite hobbies you can find, whether it's cars like myself, you can fall in love with hiking and nature and photography and things like that. This is passion maxing that I mentioned before, right? So after you've gotten to a place where you've essentially maxed out your looks maxed, right? You've hit 10 out of 10 on the scale for that. You've hit 10 out of 10 on the scale for finances. You've hit 10 out of 10 on the scale for interpersonal relationships with your family and friends and things like that. Building a network, right? Building a network of people that are going to support you and carry you and pick you up when you fall down, right? We all know how important that is. Once you've hit a certain level of maximum for everything, it's almost impossible to fully max out, be 10 out of 10. You know what I mean? But there's a certain energy that you will protrude, right? There's a certain energy that you're going to give off, and there's a certain karma, and certain things are going to fall into place that will help you, that are going to come to benefit yourself, right? So there's certain people on this world, in this, just in general, I know you know what I'm talking about. Certain people, like, this guy just has it all, right? This guy is smart, funny, good looking, rich, whatever the case is. These people are relentlessly working on themselves, right? Day in and day out. And I know some people have a starting point, like, way, like, they have an easier starting point than others, whether they have a rich parents, whether they're just naturally good looking, whatever the case may be. I'm not the tallest person, right? At that point, I'm like nerfed. So who the heck cares? People talk about height so much. People talk about height like you have to be 6 foot to do this and that. The people that I've heard talk about how you have to be 6 foot or whatever to be able to attract a certain people, there's they've never been able to, even if they're taller than me, there's a certain level where they're just not able to compare, right? And you can tell when someone has been working on themselves for a while, right? It shows itself in the way you interact with people. It shows itself in the way you carry yourself. And when you carry yourself with a certain energy and a certain positivity, that's aura that people are talking about. And whatever brain rot terms there are for it, if that helps you understand it, that helps you understand it. So that is my thought that I have left. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed.